Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the minutes show that all members are present except for Jim Tomsky. Citizen comments. We have a citizen comment from Mr. Steve Bolka. Steve?
Steve, yeah, go ahead, just stand up and you can address the board. Okay, you can come right up in here. I don't know whether we have a special spot. I can be right here if that's all right.
Nope. Hey, good evening. My name is Steve Bolka. I live at 10748 281st Avenue Northwest in Baldwin Township. I stand here tonight as a member of the community, as a parent of 2 Princeton students, and as an educator starting my 22nd year of teaching in public education. On August 29th, my wife and I sent you all an email outlining our concerns about Princeton School's lack of proactive strategies in regards to keeping students safe from COVID-19 and keeping them in-person learning. Mr. Martin, I appreciate your response email, but we found it lacking some answers to our specific questions and concerns. And in August 27th, district communication was stated that at Princeton Public Schools, we support the CDC recommendations. And this is mostly true. If you go through the recommendations, Princeton Schools checks the box next to every single recommendation except for one, and that would be masking. After vaccinations, masking is the CDC's #1 recommendation to keep our students and staff safe. Princeton Public Schools has made the decision to ignore this high-level scientifically based recommendation centered on student and staff safety. In that same August 27th district communication, it was stated that, quote, "We know how to reduce transmission." Since Princeton Schools is only ignoring the CDC recommendation on masking, I have to assume that that statement means that Princeton has other data that shows not wearing a mask reduces transmission among staff and students, and not wearing a mask will increase our chance at long-term uninterrupted in-person learning. If that's true, I hope that you can provide the community and myself that data. In your response email, you stated that the success of our summer programming and the first 10 days of sports as kind of a guideline of why we're moving in the right direction. But I think we can all agree that those summer programs and 10 days of sports does not compare in complexity to a normal school day. The most troubling statement for us that was made in the August 27th communication was, quote, "We cannot ignore the pandemic, yet we won't put every safety precaution in place." We can't ignore the pandemic, yet we won't put every safety precaution in place. That statement is not only dangerous to staff and students, but I think irresponsible as a school district. It's scientific fact that masking slows transmission of COVID-19. It keeps our students and staff safer. This keeps our students in school. And as a teacher, do you know what is worse than wearing a mask in school? It's teaching and learning from home. That's the worst. I'm asking you to stand up and to be brave. Let's not wait to react, to pivot when numbers go up. Let's be proactive. Let's do what's best for students and not just what might be easy. In the end, why wouldn't we at Princeton Schools implement every safety precaution? I hope you'll consider adding this to an agenda and vote to implement a masking mandate. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bolka. Move on to board member committee reports, starting with Chad.
I had a finance committee meeting before this, and that's about it for me.
All right, thank you, Deb.
Had a number of things happening. I attended the referendum informational meeting that all of Lee Steinberger had organized with the farmers. I attended that, and then I've attended 3 of the referendum communication meetings since our last board meeting. Went to did the primary open house and the high school open house for the referendum and then finance.
All right, thank you. Eric.
I attended the finance committee before this. I also attended the middle school open house, which was packed. And also attended a referendum informational meeting for the youth sports people.
Thank you. Sue?
I attended the open house for intermediate with Don, and we're very busy reaching out to people. And then I picked up the tail end of the high school with Deb. That's what, that was all.
Thank you. Donna?
I attended 2 public engagement meetings. The welcome back for teachers and staff. I attended, and then 2 open houses, the intermediate and middle school, which were both very busy.
All right, thank you. I had probably 3 different referendum meetings I was in on, and we had an agenda planning last Wednesday, kind of a little informal one at the primary school while we were there. Primary school open house. Popped into the intermediate school for a little bit. Then Wednesday, the intermediate or the middle school, which was, it was crazy. There was a lot of people there. It was very busy at the middle school. That's it. That's all I had. We don't have a student council report as of yet. Superintendent report.
It was a great day in Princeton Public Schools. I was able to send you all and send out the community some pictures as our first buses were rolling in early this morning, and that was a huge deal, because I just knew all of the energy that went into that moment happening for our students. And it was our first opportunity to experience our tiered busing system. And, besides a few problem solving that we had to do throughout the day, that was a success, although I wouldn't deem it a full success until we get through the first couple of weeks of the tiered busing. As you know, the first week of school is somewhat of a transition week, where we every day will add more students into the district. The intermediate school was the only school that we had all of our grade levels in, and that was a hugely successful day as well. So last week we did all of the open houses that were shared out. We had all of our team members back, which was a great experience. That was a hugely successful week. Our teachers appreciated the fact that we were able to provide as much time as we could for them to work in their classrooms to get prepared. We did at the high school level continue to move forward with our team mental health first aid training, so that we're going to be prepped to be the first district in the state to be able to provide that important certification for our students. So that we're excited about that as well. I need the board to know that our enrollment right now is higher than we had anticipated. We're keeping an eye on our ranges for kindergarten and first grade. We have also added additional staff for our third grade, as you know, and a part-time position at the fourth grade. So we'll be monitoring those numbers regularly, and we may need to add additional staff if it is warranted. This next week that will tell us quite a bit. And then the last thing that I'll just make reference to is the referendum updates. We had lots of communications on that last week, and this week not as many times that I'm out and about in the community, but that will pick back up starting next week, which will include some Facebook Lives and some of those other means of getting information out. Also working with some of the townships to get information out to them. We will have some of our first copying conversations starting next week as well. So lots going on with that. I'll wait to share remarks on the safe return to school when we get to that moment in the agenda that's coming up.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ben? All right, sorry, Deb, do you have something?
The coffee conversations, are those in the evening? Do you want
Well,
members to be there?
the very first one that I do is, I think, going to be next Wednesday, and it's going to be after agenda planning. So it's going to be at 4 o'clock. So yeah, having a board member there would be outstanding, because the the focus of that afternoon conversation will be questions around the referendum. But I will be doing lots more coffee conversations, and it will be more than just referendum kinds of issues, but for this
What
first
date is
one.
See you next Wednesday.
I believe it's next
The
Wednesday,
15th.
the 15th at 4.
And I will be at that one as well, because I made some calls asking some people to come in.
Okay.
No big deal.
There's still, we still need to get on the books, a full public meeting. And that's a requirement
Mhm.
as part of the review and comment. We are still waiting for the results of that review and comment to come in. I have received a couple of questions from MDE over the course of the last month regarding that. And, we get the information back to them. We still are confident that that's all a go, but a little bit slower in getting that back.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Motion made by Eric Minks. Do we have a second?
No second.
Seconded by Chad. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All right, need to discuss and act on the previous board meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes as read?
So
Motion made by Eric Minks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Deb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Moving on to consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Deb.
Second.
Seconded by Sue. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Alright, sorry. Moving on to information, fall 2021-2022 update. Who has this?
Oh, well, I think I've already mentioned that. I mean, it's basically just sharing with you how the first day has gone. And so far so good, but the next couple of days, we'll need to be on the ready. We have all of our admin on the ready to help troubleshoot and problem solve any issues that might come up as it could relate to transportation, building and grounds, food service, all of those things that we just need to be ready to address.
Right, and then the next thing is the referendum update, which we've kind of already
Mhm.
talked about as well. Do you have anything else you want to add to that? Are you good? All right, thank you. Moving on to the action, teacher contract. Jason, do we have anything that we need to report on this?
So the teachers did ratify their contract today, so it would be up to the board if they would like to also approve that contract, and then we'll be moving forward and finalizing.
Do you know what that count was? What the,
They did not send me the hard results, the final numbers. They just said that it did pass, so.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the 2021 through 2023 teacher contract as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Sue, seconded by Deb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call, starting with Don.
Yes.
Sue,
yes,
I'm going to abstain from this vote. Eric Minks,
yes.
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Chad, thank you. Motion is approved. We have five in favor, one abstain. Motion is approved. Moving on to the safe return to school resolution. The resolution's in our board packet. We've all had the opportunity to review this and look at it a few times over the weekend especially. Do we have a motion to accept the resolution approving the safe return to school plan and delegating authority to the superintendent as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Deb. Do we have a second?
second,
Seconded by Eric Minks. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I've provided information to the board on this topic over the last couple of months. and offered opportunities for questions and for you to share your thoughts with me. This resolution is putting into action our safe return to school plan, and also provides information for us to make decisions if we need to increase mitigation strategies and also prevention strategies and add possible restrictions. And board members have indicated that they want to have an opportunity to share their thoughts on this as well. So here's that opportunity to do so. And yeah, we do support the CDC recommendations, but we are not requiring all of them at this point. We're utilizing local data and information that we have a plan in draft form that I will be able to share with you a final draft here by the end of the week that has information related to how we will be tracking data and how we will be making decisions to potentially increase mitigation strategies in the district. So Chad, I know that you had some comments or questions.
Yeah, so I'm good with, because I agree that we have to let you make the decisions. And the part that I'm not really, as far as the return to school, as far as the not following the CDC and the MDH on the masking, I feel like we're not being proactive, and in this case, where and typically I think the school district does act proactively in most things. So I guess I don't really understand why we're not acting proactively. And because I'm in agreement that like I said, that we have to give you the authority. However, I don't agree with that piece of it, because if you look at the CDC and the MDH, they are requiring masks. If you're in public, you're supposed to be wearing a mask. And they even say, all schools should be wearing masks. And the MDH says that as well. So I feel like we're not following that at this point, and that part I don't agree with. So I don't know how other people feel about that on the board, but I think it should at least be considered before you look at the political part of it. I think we have to look at the safety of the children, and that's why I really feel like we should at least, it doesn't hurt. The kids don't mind it. I know my kids, when they go to school and if they put a mask, no big deal. It's gonna save it from spreading throughout the district. I think it's an easy task to do, just to throw a mask on. And if you look at the photo that you took today, many of the kids in that photo actually had masks on. And I just think why not just put it out there as a safety precaution, being proactive, that I would follow the CDC and MDH guidelines. But that's all I have to say about it. I'd really like to see us at least consider that and have the discussion. Because I don't think I've talked to other people in the board, and I don't think we really have it. It's been shared amongst other board members. So I think it'd be beneficial to have that discussion.
Well, that's what we're here to have. So I don't know what other board members' thoughts are.
To me, I think that parents are the ones that are going to be paramount in deciding what's safe for their children and not. And so, I just think it's really important at this point to give parents that decision. We're not seeing high numbers here. And I just think that decision should be a parent's decision. And anybody who wants, as you saw in that picture, there were kids that wore masks. Anybody who feels that that's important, then they absolutely should do that. It's a family decision, I think. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I can, I get that and understand. But again, for me, I think it's just not being proactive. We're still being kind of reactive with my thoughts. And that's reactive. It's just
I guess what's in the resolution is a part in there that would indicate that if our COVID numbers are increasing, we are seeing evidence of spread, that I will certainly, once we hit a threshold, make a recommendation that we do increase mitigation strategies. You'll also notice that in that resolution, the board would make the final call, but it does give me the authority to make that decision quickly if needed. But that would be brought to the board as a whole to make that decision. To have it be permanent. Kirk Minks, what do you think?
So I looked at that picture too, and the first thing I noticed is that the majority of the kids, I think, just in that snapshot of time, I understand the majority of the kids were wearing masks. To Deb's point is that the parents had said our kids are going to wear masks. I know that, and I think that's what it should be left up to, especially when we look at our local numbers. They're not, I mean, they're relatively low right now. And I know my son is fully vaccinated. A lot of the kids in high school are fully vaccinated. Most everyone that I know of is fully vaccinated. And if Danny wants to wear a mask while he's in school, I have no problem with that. So, I mean, as of right now, I feel that a mask mandate is not needed. If it is, then I'll be sure to vote for one if the numbers get to that level like they did last year. And that's all.
I agree. I feel like this should be the parents' decision. I think us as elected officials of this community, our public spoke to us last Tuesday and Wednesday at open houses. Without even saying a word, they spoke to us saying that, hey, we're comfortable going to school. We're comfortable sending our kids to school without masks. Granted, we did see some people with masks, but we saw how many thousands of people last Tuesday and Thursday, and how many people were wearing masks. I asked my kids today, my 6th grader and my 2nd grader, are there kids in your classroom wearing masks? Yep, there was one kid in the 2nd grade class. Great, good for him. And my 6th grader said that at Web Day, I think he said he saw 10 kids with masks. Like, parents aren't sending their kids to school with masks. So why are we making that decision, or why do we think we need to make that decision for the parents if they feel like it's safe enough to send their kids to school without a mask right now? I just don't know what gives us that power to say that we should be making this decision for them. That's my 2 cents.
I just think we're in a completely different space now than we were last year.
But so, I guess what I question is so if why do we follow the CDC and MDH before now?
We were forced to. They were gonna pull our funding, and like there was threats from the state that they weren't gonna fund us if we didn't
So
follow.
if that changes, then
Like right now, they're not mandating it. The state isn't, so
We didn't have a
that's
choice
just fun.
before.
on MDE, it does say that they
recommend, not mandate though.
right.
Big difference in
Yeah,
those.
that's true. It is a big difference.
But that's why we did it last year, is because we had to. And
We
if
didn't have a
get-
choice.
If we didn't get our funding from the state, I mean,
Right.
what, we're out $25 million if we don't get funding from the state? I mean, we're closing the doors, closing the buildings. So right now, we don't have to. There's no one telling us we have to, except for the 6 of us in this room and Jim.
But I want to go back to the number one goal that we have is for our kids to be in person learning.
Absolutely.
And I would say that we need to every single day, multiple times in the day, checking in on what is the current status of each classroom, each site, each grade level, to determine, how many symptoms, how many students are exhibiting symptoms, how many influenza symptoms are there. We're utilizing the pre-existing information MDH had in place with influenza. If you hit over 5% of the population in a school, you would add mitigation strategies. 5% of, 1,000 student, you're talking 50 or so students. It'd be, I don't know, that we're gonna be using that, and then we're gonna also be using the number of COVID cases that are in each classroom and each building. And we'll also be utilizing the contact tracing information to determine if there is spread. I will tell the board right now that if our numbers are increasing to a point where we would feel like we would be even getting close to being in jeopardy of full in-person learning, my recommendation will be that we add the face mask as a mitigation strategy. Right? We are just starting, we're not starting there, and because we're committed to using local data and local information.
And this resolution, or the safe return to school plan, essentially gives you the authority to make that decision to put masks on or not put masks on until we get to the next regular scheduled board meeting, unless we needed to call an emergency meeting for some reason.
Which, potentially we would.
And then which we would vote to support Ben or not support Ben. And
You may ultimately, it's being looked at as a policy decision, and if that was implemented, the board would have to vote to withhold it. And, this is such a tricky thing, because we're all talking about a subject right now that we know that if we talk to hundreds of people, how should you open up school? You might get 100 different answers. And it's very polarizing. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of emotion around it. And we're all working our best to try and get this right without having 100% confidence, that it is right. And, our goal is to educate our students in the community. And, they're potentially, if we did start the school year, potentially with starting with requirements of masks, there is a high likelihood of many families choosing not to send their children to school, period, or homeschooling or those kinds of things. And there's some danger in that too. There's so many different variable factors that we're trying to consider here. But we do need to be prepared, and I'm prepared to change course or recommend that we change course if we need to. And, it sounds complicated, but it's really not. If we have to move to mandatory required face coverings, it's a communication out that says, hey, starting tomorrow, everyone's wearing a mask. And we know that will likely go over like a lead balloon in some circles, but that's what we need to be prepared to do. And I know that not everyone around the board, around this table will agree with that if that's a decision that I think needs to be made. But again, the number one piece, I think, is to keep our kids in school, in person learning all school year. But we also need to be realists too, to know that, us and any school across our state and country, may have periods where a classroom's out. Maybe they have 3 or 4 students in a classroom, a second grade classroom. Okay, we need to implement masking in that classroom, for 2 weeks, or maybe we need to have a 2-week reset for that group. I guess we need to be prepared to respond accordingly. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm the granny around the table. I have current kids, and I have grandkids in both camps. Some going to school with masks and some not. And so I've listened on both sides. I have to say I'm torn a tad bit in the K-5 group that is not vaccinated. And I've done my homework and done a lot of reading. And what it came to me was, because our numbers are lower, and I have stayed in communication with Ben to understand what they are, that I feel it's okay to start without masks. I was very interested in the document that he sent us that is in draft form right now and gave input on that. And as I talked to parents that went through, they're like, okay, just tell me what the plan is. I'm okay that we're starting here, but what will make the change? And that document has those details in it. And I think that as the counties look at that document and that is to me, that's sort of what we're also voting on tonight, is that we have a plan in place to make that change as if the numbers go up. And so that's what I wanted to say. I'm okay with to have that next step in place so that parents aren't kind of wondering, well, what would cause the school board to make a change? That document's very clear about that and made some recommendations on that. So I'm an optimist, and I'm just hoping that we'll be okay and that we won't have to change, but I will support a change. And I also said to Ben, what does it take? One day. Y'all come with a mask tomorrow. It doesn't have to take 2 weeks. It could take 1 day. If next week things look crazy, well then it takes 1 day to notify parents.
Thank you. Don?
I'm currently okay with the road we're on. I think it's also, that is a family's choice. I think it's also a conversation that parents should have already had with their children's doctors or their physicians for the families. You gotta have that open communication and that recommendation. And I've been down that road. I know what their recommendation is. Probably what the boys will be doing, but I'm okay. I know if things get out of hand, we can switch. That K-5, they don't have the option of being vaccinated right now. So this tiered system, or like Ben said, it might be going to 1 grade saying masks. As long as we got the stuff in place, I can't look at data that's happening in Minneapolis. I need to see what the data is happening here locally. Because that's going to be different throughout this entire state. And the other piece that I'm kind of struggling with too is, we have sports going on and, kids playing without masks. Because then, high school league isn't mandating that. So, we're saying in school you wear a mask, but when you go out in that court or field, you may not have a mask on. So it's kind of a double standard in a way to me. I think it should be the same all the way across the board. Especially with that sports piece in other districts and that, because we do play, a lot of different schools in a lot of different areas in our conference that are not readily close by us, but their numbers might be high in their area, but their neighboring county could be low. So there's a lot of things that have to go into play, and I'm assuming that all that will be looked at and play into that safe return policy as well.
I met with Mille Lacs County and Sherburne County, and the pieces that we need to desegregate is, we have, our district goes across 4 townships, so trying to decipher, not only Mille Lacs County data, but Sherburne County data. What do we have in the city limits as well? But I would tell you that the primary factor that we'll be looking at is just the data within our schools. I also need to let the board know that we can be optimistic and we can hope for the best, but we do need to be prepared for the worst. And again, being a realist, and living through last year, when things went south, they went south quickly. It wasn't like you can see it coming. And And yes, you know, the numbers are lower, but they are trending up, so we need to know that. You know, that's just the reality of, I think, the trends everywhere, probably. So, you know, I think we need to start in a place, and then we need to respond accordingly. And I guess unless there's any more questions.
Is there any more discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to just, so what we're approving tonight is this 2-page form. And I've talked to Jen about it, and I feel good at approving it if it was just, because I do think that we need to give you the authority and all the legal pieces of that. But what I just don't agree with that first section of that document that's inside of this. So not the document itself, but the document inside of that's referenced in there. So I'm just kind of, I'm torn on that piece of it, because like I said, I agree with the form and that we need to give you the authority. It's just that all the verbiage and wording, because if you look at this, I mean, there's under the high transmission, and I know it's still a working document, right? So, but I feel like it's hard to approve it when under the high transmission, you say consider outbreak groups participate in on-site temperature checks. Consider when it's high transmission. I don't know if that's, I mean, I don't like the wording on that, and so it's kind of, and I've looked through this fairly thoroughly, and there's just other wording in there that's just like, ooh, I don't know if I can agree with that with a high transmission rate, that we just would consider things versus, no, we gotta take action, and I know you would take action, but it doesn't really say that in our document. You know what I mean?
Well, the piece that's up for approval tonight is the resolution, and that document that you're referring to, we have some final eyes on that through the county tomorrow, and some of the things that you're referring to have been tightened up. And once I get some final feedback from our county officials, then I will send that to you.
And see, I took the opposite approach to that safety plan. I thought it was pretty restrictive. I
On
didn't,
the high tier transmission tier,
a lot of the wording I did not like.
considering to me is like, yeah, I'll consider it. Versus if there's high transmission, I mean, I know Ben is gonna act, I mean, he's even said it tonight. So those are two different things in my mind, whether you consider something or whether you say, no, we're taking action. I mean, do you guys agree with that, or is that not what you think of the word consider it versus?
Well, I'll give you an example of why in that draft, it was a little bit looser, and I'll go back to if you remember when the Minnesota came out with the very first plan where it said that it had the number over a 2-week period per 10,000, right? And then it said, okay, if you're in this many, if you're in elementary, you would be full in person or hybrid ed or what have you, right? And then it was real firm numbers, right? And as we went through it, along with every other school district, you found that there was other variables that you would consider in making those decisions. And, you weren't locked into that exact document as it was presented early. And those are some of the conversations that were happening in terms of, the language that you use on the consider or, required, just to give some discretion depending on what the other variables were. But I think the bottom line is I'm going to go back to, if we're seeing high transmission, if we're seeing high numbers within our schools, we are going to recommend some changes immediately to reduce the likelihood of us having to go into a distance learning kind of a format. And, there's other factors that might go into that too, that aren't even part of that, and that might be if certain subgroups of staff members are out with COVID, for example, bus drivers. We're a few bus drivers. If we have a couple, 2-3 bus drivers go out, we might have to make some significant changes with our school schedule. And that could be for any number of different groups of staff that we have.
Is there any more discussion that anyone has on this? Any more comments, anyone?
I
Okay.
guess mine would be that the strategy, we will be seeing an updated, and I suppose at some point we will be approving this as a board, or will just be continuing updated throughout the year.
Well, I think it needs to be written so that it can be flexible, but yeah, I will send this to you as an email by the end of the week with updates, and then we can have ongoing discussion on that.
Because that was my understanding. I thought, this is just our guideline. At some point, we'll get more finalized information. If we look about a month ago, we weren't even talking about some of this stuff and how much things have changed. Put something together like this strategy can't be put together within, a couple weeks. We need to allow some time, and I think we got a starting point. And, Chad, I totally understand where you're coming from. And, some wording, how, considered, also we gotta look at in a court of law, how's that word considered in a court of law? How would it be if we had to go to court? How would that be translated? There's gonna be different phases to that we have to look at as well. And I'm assuming, Ben is gonna be in contact with our lawyer too on some of that as well, besides the county's input. So do I agree with some of the wording? Probably not. But at the same time, we got all some flexible, just my opinion. And I think we just, I don't think there's not one person that doesn't want these kids in school.
Absolutely.
And that is our number one goal, and there's a lot of consulting that has to be done with many groups, and in the short time frame, I am, pretty pleased with what we got written up for the very short time that you guys have had to work on it. It's not easy for our administration, it's not easy for our families. It's not easy for our teachers or staff. And this will affect our community and
So I'm just kind of thinking about this document again. So if we're voting on this too, then I feel like I have to, just because I don't agree with it. So I don't want you to think that I don't support what you're doing, that that's what I would be voting no on if I vote. But I do support what this document says. The 2-page
The
document. I don't support this document.
Eric, you had something? Does anyone else have any discussion? Any last words? All right, we had a motion a while back, I think it was by Deb and seconded by Sue. We discussed it. I'd say we put this to a vote by roll call. We'll start with Chad.
No.
Deb,
Yes.
Eric Minks,
Yes.
Eric Strandberg, yes. Sue,
Yes.
Don.
yes.
All right, it is approved 5-1. All right, there are no additions to the agenda. Future meetings are listed below. We have a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion.
Motion made by Don. Do we have a second? Second by Eric Minks. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.